Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is another great day to discuss other people's excellence. I'm the unforgettable one himself, Mr. Brett Carroll. I'm just a guy that likes BSN at work. Sorry for the absence. I have been in China the last 2 weeks. We had a great trip. Shout out to Anta. Shout out to the All Even team. Really good, great trip over there. Go check my Instagram out for all that good stuff. It's all on there. So yeah, I haven't been here the last 2 weeks, so we haven't been able to record. Charles is busy today, but again, because I haven't given you a pod the last 2 weeks, I wanted to at least do this one. So we're gonna be solo today, but that's all right. So we're gonna get started. It says week 4 recap, but we're kind of recapping like just how I feel in general now that we're a month into the season, almost a quarter done. Um, so let's get into it. Breaking news right before I started recording: Devante Adams requesting a trade. I changed the main page before. This used to be a picture of that Kenneth Walker play from Monday night, the incredible play he had last night, but uh with the breaking news coming in literally as I was sitting down to record this, I said, well, I guess we got to change the main uh, picture here. So I guess let's talk about that first. Uh, I feel weird about this because I just don't understand the timing. This is now the second season he's been there without Derek Carr, and we all knew he went to Vegas because of Derek Carr. So when they got rid of Derek Carr, everyone was expecting him to request a trade then. And he voiced his displeasure back then when they got rid of Derek Carr. He never even got to play a full season with Derek Carr. If you remember, they benched Derek Carr towards the end of the year and then kind of just let him walk in free agency. Um, so that was weird, right? And so I kind of get it playing the good soldier and not requesting a trade right away. You just got there, they just paid you. I get all that. You played a season without him last year and they weren't good. And once again, you played the good soldier and you didn't make a fuss and you came and did your job every day, and that's all good. Um, but you knew they weren't going to be good this year. Everybody knew they weren't going to be good this year. And so the timing of this now is just weird to me, especially after the summer that we had where all these other wide receivers were trying to uh be moved or get paid and everything else. He could have been a major factor in that. And maybe he wanted to wait till that market cooled down so that he could raise his value a little bit. But like even in that, that kind of doesn't make sense because he was always going to be the quote unquote cheaper option anyway because of his age and because he already has gotten paid. So a team would just be paying the rest of his contract as opposed to trading for some of these younger superstars that they have to trade a lot more draft capital for and pay them, a la Brandon Ayuk, a la a Jamar Chase, a la a T. Higgins. Um, so even that strategy didn't make sense to me. Uh, if anything, the fact that he's the only guy on the market now ups his value on the trade market, which if you're Devante Adams, you don't want that because you want to go to a team that's good. You don't want a team to have to forego a lot of draft capital to get you. You know what I mean? Like you kind of want to be a throw in on one of these trades because you just want to get to a better situation without without killing the team that you're going to. As a matter of fact, just now it says Vegas would consider moving wide receiver for a second round pick and additional compensation. Okay, cool. Right. Um, that's their asking price, and we'll see what they let's see it. We'll see if they even move him, and we'll see if they do move him, what they'll get for him. Devonte Adams in particular is interesting because I was gonna talk about this when we talked about the Brandon Ayuk situation in terms of Devonte Adams, but I didn't because of some other things that were going on. But It's one of those things I still don't understand why the NFL doesn't have multi-team trades like the NBA does. Like if for those who don't know, the NBA, you could trade with as many teams as necessary can be involved in a trade. Um, for instance, Karl Anthony Towns just got traded to the Knicks. The main trade was him for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, but Charlotte is also involved in the deal, and they're getting, I think, a player is moved, and they're getting draft compensation. Da 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 da. I'm guessing that's just to make the money work, right? I'm very surprised the NFL doesn't do that because it would make trading significantly easier to do in the NFL. You have way more draft picks to trade in the NFL. Everybody's cap situation is different. I feel like it would be so much easier to make trades work. So, for instance, the reason why the Brandon Ayuk trade never made sense to me as a Steeler fan is, like I said, we weren't a Brandon Ayuk away from winning a Super Bowl. And so, if you're telling me I have to trade a bunch of draft capital to get him and I got to pay him, it just doesn't make sense, right? If it's one or the other, fine. But both kills the Steelers' chances of winning. And you're basically saying we got to try to win this year or else this isn't going to work. And Devante Adams to me was perfect because to me it was like, okay, if you did a three-team trade where the 49ers got Devante Adams, we got Brandon Ayuk, and again, the uh Raiders got a second round pick, right? That's a fair deal. You're only giving if you're the Steelers, you're only really giving up a second round pick. Fine. You're getting Brandon Ayuk, who's the younger player. Fine. If you're the Niners, you're getting the wide receiver you want in return. Fine. And so now, really, the only thing you got to do is now pay Brandon Ayuk. Cool. Or something along those lines. Um, but the fact that the NFL doesn't have three-team trades, you can't do something like that. And that trade would have made sense for everybody. Now, the reason why I didn't bring it up at the time because a report came out that I guess the Broncos blocked what essentially would have been a three-team trade because the Niners wanted Cortland Sutton. For whatever reason, the Broncos said no. And so the trade would have been something similar where we get Ayuk, they get Sutton, and the Broncos would have gotten some trade capital. So essentially, they were going to try to do it, but it would have been two separate trades, if that makes sense. I still don't understand why the NFL doesn't adopt that in their new CBA to allow multi-team trades because it makes, especially during draft time, all these teams that have multiple first round picks or multiple third round picks and da 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 da. Even just moving up in the draft would make more sense if other teams can get involved and say, hey, we want to get to the number one position, but we don't have number one draft capital. This team has a bunch of draft capital, but they need a veteran player. We have a veteran player, and we're tanking because that's why we want to move up to the first round pick, to the first overall pick anyway. So we'll give you some of our veterans. You'll give them the draft picks. We'll move up to number one. Everybody, it works. You know what I mean? Like, so I never understood why the NFL doesn't do that. Like I said, Devante Adams was the poster child for that this offseason because I thought Devante Adams would have made a lot of trades actually happen, whether it be a T. Higgins trade, whether it be a Brandon Ayuk trade, whether it be even a Jamar Chase trade. Devante Adams is still really good, and a team could use him, and he's just stuck on Vegas. So again, everything's just weird to me about this. The timing of it makes no sense. He should have requested a trade years ago. Um, even earlier this offseason, he should have requested a trade. Uh, why the NFL doesn't have multi-team trades doesn't make any sense because trades like this would be easier. Because even Devonte Adams, this trade is a little hard to pull off, but we'll see. That's just my quick 2 cents of this Devonte Adams news. Like I said, just broke as we started to record this. All right. I told you we're going to talk some more college football this season, and we have to talk about this game. This was an instant classic. Georgia, Alabama. The tie holding on to beat the Dogs 41-34. This kid, Ryan Williams, is absolutely incredible. 17 years old. If you want to feel old, if you want to feel old, I think they said he was born a day before Julio Jones committed to Alabama. If you want to feel old, Julio Jones, one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen, one of the best wide receivers in the history of the game, recently retired, had a great career, probably will be in the Hall of Fame. This kid was born a day before he committed to Alabama, before he even played in college. That's when this kid was born. So that's how young this kid is. Serena Williams tweeted that that's her cousin. I don't know if she was joking or not, but like it makes sense if he is. Like if that's really Serena Williams' cousin, it makes a lot more sense because this dude was incredible. If you didn't see the highlights of this game, please go watch him. The move he does, the game-winning play, essentially, catching in between two people, running, dead leg drop spin, and then sprinting up the sideline for the touchdown. Again, this kid's 17 years old. This kid's gonna be a superstar, God willing. Um, Yeah, man, like that was he's incredible. The game was incredible. We'll talk about Jalen Milroe later and how that helped his draft stock. But this was already the game of the year. And it's games like this is what makes college football fun. Yeah, college football could be boring sometimes, the blowouts, the sloppy football plays and stuff like that. But it's games like this that make you say, yeah, man, this is one of the best things to watch in all of television because this was great. Two great teams I missed the second half, and something told me I will not. And that's word to everything I love. I was tired. I said, I'm gonna go to bed. They were getting blown out at halftime, and I'm laying down. I'm sitting there saying, "There's a good chance they could get back in this game. It is college football. We see it all the time. Crazier things have happened." I said, "But you know what? I'm tired. The way they're playing right now, it doesn't look like it, but it could happen." And sure enough, I woke up later. I think when I woke up, the game had just ended, and I had all these notifications on my phone about the play, about the Bulldogs coming back, about the Crimson Tide holding on to win. My Twitter's going crazy. My mentions are going crazy. The group chats are going crazy. And I'm like, damn, I knew I shouldn't have went to sleep on this. Something told me Georgia could get back in this game because again, crazier things have happened. But yeah, again, this is why you can't sleep on college football. It's that fun of entertainment. It really is. And this kid is something special. This Alabama team is something special. The Georgia team is something special. Again, we'll get into them a little bit later. All right, speaking of guys that were supposed to be special. It's time we have a serious conversation about Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars fell to the Texans 20 for 20 on Sunday and are now 0-4. If the draft were to happen right now, I believe they would have the number one pick in the draft. They've been struggling since last year. Again, don't ever disrespect the towel. Ever since they waved that towel, they beat Pittsburgh and I don't think they won a game since or something like that. It's been crazy. Don't disrespect the towel. Um, yeah, they just been struggling. And Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked like a bust, but he hasn't looked like the can't miss generational prospect that he was supposed to be and that he was being hyped up to be. This dude was the biggest prospect since Andrew Luck. And if you're old enough to remember the hype around Andrew Luck, you remember how hyped that was. Trevor Lawrence was getting that type of hype. And to be fair to Andrew Luck, besides the injuries, he lived up to that hype. He was amazing. The injuries, unfortunately, caused him to retire early, but he was incredible when he first got into the league, and basically his whole career. Um, yeah, I don't. There's a lot that I want to get into with this Trevor Lawrence thing because it's weird. If you remember before the draft, I said it's weird. I said it was kind of football racism because if you swapped Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence's careers, right? Justin Fields would have went as a guy that was so hyped till he would have fell. Because remember, this kid, Trevor Lawrence, won the championship as a freshman and was touted as the next generational guy. But every year since then, he kind of went down. But it was kind of like, he's still Trevor Lawrence. He's still that guy. He's still the prince that was promised, basically. Justin Fields beat Trevor Lawrence every year, was getting better and better and better every year. And yet he still fell to 11 in the draft. Granted, neither one of them has had a career so far where it's been like, oh my God, these guys are, phenomenal, can't miss prospects. But at the same time, I'm not that surprised that Trevor Lawrence hasn't lived up to the hype because, again, I think by the time he was drafted, and that's the key here, by the time he was drafted, I thought he was very overhyped because, again, he was getting Andrew Luck type of hype when I wasn't seeing Andrew Luck type of production at the college level. Again, his peak was his freshman year. He got worse every year. He was still good, but he got worse every year. And it was kind of just like, yeah, but like we still think he's this can't miss prospect. And again, he hasn't been a bust, but he hasn't been this can't miss prospect. And that the Jaguars need him to be. And so I don't know, it's weird. And it's almost as if the media is trying to cover their own behinds because even now, he's just not talked about. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Jaguars are just kind of out of sight, out of mind. And we kind of just ignore the fact that he just hasn't been that good. And I kind of don't like that because if this was any other quarter, you know what I mean? Like we nitpick Lamar Jackson more. We nitpick Josh Allen more. And those guys didn't come in with nearly the hype as Trevor Lawrence did. And so I don't know. I just feel like, people are starting to nitpick Patrick Mahomes, right? When you're great, you get nitpicked. This guy was supposed to be great. And it's like an admittance that he's not great, but we're just not going to acknowledge it because then we would have to acknowledge that we overhyped him. And I don't like that. I don't like that. I feel like this guy was supposed to be one of these can't miss quarterbacks in a league that's full of can't miss quarterbacks, and he's kind of been like just okay. We're nitpicking Joe Burrow more, right? Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. There's been a lot of talk about how Joe Burrow's getting a pass and how Joe Burrow's getting a slap on the wrist per se. And it's like, well, at least Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. He's been to another conference finals, like, or, AFC championship game conference finals, thinking basketball. Joe Burrow has at least earned that pass, if we will. Trevor Lawrence hasn't done anything yet. So again, I don't get it. I hope he turns it around. Again, I don't root for against any of these people. I don't know them well enough. He seems like a cool guy. But yeah, I just don't get how he's being covered. I don't get what's going on down there. I don't get anything with that. So, we gonna have to start having some conversation about Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. All right. Back to college. As you know, I'm a Rutgers fan. I went to OU, but my parents went to Rutgers. I'm a diehard Rutgers fan. I was so hyped. I wish Charles was on this pod. I called Charles Friday night. I said, you got to turn this game on because Rutgers is back. Whatever that means. Back to what? We don't know, but they're back. Rutgers had the biggest win since entering the Big Ten on Friday in a thrilling 21-18 victory over the Washington Huskies. Again, take that for what you will. Like they haven't done much in the Big Ten. So yeah. The sellout crowd was electric and it showed how lit Rutgers would be if they were a perennial contender. It's probably, and this is sad to say, this is probably Rutgers' biggest win since that win against Louisville back in the Ray Rice days. Again, it's not saying much. It was an unranked Washington team at home, coming across the country. You know what I mean? First game of Big Ten play. So it's not even as big as the Louisville win, but it is the biggest win that they've had since then. Again, it's not saying much, but as a Rutgers fan, you take what you can get. And as a Rutgers fan, by the way, if I sound nasally and congested, I'm coming off a really bad cold. Sorry, but I'm pushing through for you guys because I love you. Yeah, like this is our biggest win. Take it for a grain of salt. But it was cool. It was so fun to see a packed house like that. The crowd was so electric. I think I read somewhere that even like the Washington coach admitted like, yo, the crowd was crazy and it kind of rattled us a little bit. Da 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 da. Um, so yeah, like as a Rutgers fan, it just makes you proud because that's all we want, man. We just want a competitive team. I don't think anybody is expecting Rutgers to win the Big Ten. We're not expecting Rutgers to be, a dynasty. We just want a good team. We just want a team we can root for. And I also want to shout out Jersey football because Jersey is one of those states we get overlooked in football. Like we're actually pretty good in football. We're not Florida, we're not Texas, we're not Ohio, we're not Georgia, we're not Louisiana. We get it. We're not in the top five in terms of football states. But I think we're top 10. We might be in that bottom 10, 8, 9, 10, but I think we're top 10. And considering there's 50 states, like that's still big. Jersey's got players. Jersey's got schools. And Rutgers has always been frustrating because it's like, yo, if they could just keep their Jersey kids, they would be a really good football team. If you look throughout the history of football, there's a lot of great players that were superstars at other colleges that are from Jersey. And it's like if Jersey would just keep just their kids, they would be a great team. Um, yeah, if Rutgers could just keep those Jersey kids, they'd be a great team. And so wins like this matter, sellout crowds like this matter because it shows that we do love football. We are a basketball state. Don't get me wrong. I think people know to put respect on Jersey when it comes to basketball. At least they better know. They should know, right? But we're pretty good at football too. Like we really are, and we don't get that credibility because we're not the top 5 or 6 states in the country. But we're up there, bro. I'm telling you. And so when Rutgers is good, it kind of puts a spotlight on that because all of Rutgers kids are Jersey kids. They're all like, Jersey kids that just stayed on. And so this is cool. They gotta keep the momentum. I think this is our first 4-0 season since 2012. So again, it's been a long time since we've been this good. I think they play Nebraska this week on the road. It's gonna be a tough game, but they gotta keep it up, man. This can't, and they've been getting better and better every year, but at the same time, we gotta keep it up. I hope we can maintain the momentum because again, it's just more fun when Rutgers is, you know, a contender, quotes, a good team. Let's just put it like that. All right. Back to things that disappointed me. Um, I wanted to come on this pod and say, despite being 4-0, I'm not gonna get too hyped about this because we haven't played anybody yet. And we should be 4-0 because we haven't played anybody yet. And it's a good thing that we're stacking these wins because as we know, as we lamented multiple times, the back end of our schedule is really hard. The final 8 games are all 6 division games mixed with the Chiefs and the Eagles. So take advantage of the first half of your schedule because the first half of your schedule has a lot of winnable games. Um, so yes. Unfortunately, I can't say that because we lost to the daggone Colts. And it's just frustrating because it's infuriating at this point, honestly, because this is every year, dude. It's every year. And I talk about over and over and over and over again. I love Mike Tomlin to death, but this is inexcusable, dude, because it's you. At this point, it's undeniably you. You've had different quarterbacks, you've had different offensive coordinators, you've had different personnel. You're the main constant here. And every single year, right when you start giving the Steelers credit, right when you start shining the light on them, right when you say, oh, look at the Steelers, look how good they're playing. Let's pick them to win this game. They lose. It is so annoying, bro, because this is the difference between 9-8 and barely making the playoffs or barely missing the playoffs and 11, 12 wins and maybe winning your division, maybe getting a home game in the playoffs, maybe playing a team that you can beat in the playoffs. And I'm not even going to go into that rant because if you've watched this pod enough, you've heard me go on that rant again, over and over and over again. It's just infuriating because I was hoping that this year would be different. This was one of the, like, again, this is one of those segments I kind of want Charles to be on the pod for because I want to explain the reason why I thought this was different. Because one, I think our defense is different. In years past, our defense has been a little overrated, in my opinion. We were relying too heavily on sacks. We were relying too heavily on turnovers to kind of mask our deficiencies. This year was different. We weren't really getting the turnovers. We weren't necessarily getting the sacks. We were just stopping people. We were legitly just three and out, three and out, three and out, legitly just, making people punt, legitly just, and we were still getting some sacks and turnovers, but they weren't masking other bad plays, if that makes sense. Um, so I thought this year would be different. And the offense was getting better and better every week. Again, I thought this year would be different. But no, sure enough, everybody was picking us to win and we lost. And not only did we lose, it's the way we lose. Because it's like we just forget how to play football. We can't stop the run now. We can't stop anybody. Offense goes backwards. Against a Colts team that was hurt, that was not 100%, that just wasn't that good to begin with. Again, it's just frustrating. It's like, Tomlin, I love you, dude, but you got it. Like, this has got to stop. It's yeah. Again, I'm not even gonna go because I know if I keep going, I'll be here for an hour just talking about this, especially without Charles to stop me. So yeah, I will say this though, despite everything, I still feel better about this team than I felt in a long time. Justin played horrible the first half. He bounced back in the second half. I'm not saying he's our future, but I do think he's our quarterback for now, and I'm okay with that. And I still think at full strength, we're just a couple pieces away from really being good. And I love that. Um, in this draft, I think if we can draft a corner, a receiver, and a running back, first three picks. The only reason why I say running back because I fully believe we're gonna let Najee walk, and we probably should at this point. He's just been somebody made it, I forgot who said it. I was watching a podcast, a mock draft, and they made a good point. Najee hasn't been a bust, but he's been a bust of a first round pick. He's been good, but when you draft a running back in a first round, you need them to be like special, and he hasn't been special. And I'm like, that's a great point. We drafted him in the first round, and he has not looked like a first round running back. He's looked like a good running back. If you drafted him in the third round, I think nobody's complaining about Najee Harris, right? Him as a first round pick, it's like, dude, you're supposed to be a focal point of the offense. And you just haven't been. Even on Sunday, Cordell Patterson was our best running back before he got hurt. So, and he makes and it's frustrating because he makes first round plays like once a game. Like he'll run somebody over or he'll hurdle somebody or he'll bounce off a tackle and make like you know what I mean. He'll make a first round caliber play damn near every game, and so you see it, you see the potential, but then the rest of the game is just like, dude, like he has no burst sometimes. So it's like you can't really blame the offensive line because when Jalen Warren's in the game, you see the big chunk plays. When Cordell Patterson's in the game, you see the big chunk plays. But with Najee, it's always these, not just fighting for every dust type of plays. Um, but yeah, so anyway, again, I don't want to get into this. If we could get a corner, if we get a wide receiver in a second, there's a lot of good receivers in this draft. And we're great at drafting second round receivers. And if we can get a running back in the third, and again, this is a great, and I mean a great running back draft class. There's a couple guys that we might even consider drafting in the first round. The only reason why I wouldn't want to do that is because, again, you're now asking them to be superstars. And it's like, I don't know if I want to take that risk again. Two, in the first round, I rather go corner because this isn't the greatest corner class. There's some first round guys for sure, but it's like once those guys are gone, there's a significant drop off, and we still need another corner. So that probably has to be our first round pick. If not a corner, there are some receivers that, as of right now, are probably second, third round guys. But the way they're playing, by the time we get to the draft, they might be first round guys. And I kind of want them on my team. So if we take them in the first round, I wouldn't be mad at it because we obviously need another receiver. But yeah, if the draft board falls to us where we could get a corner in the first, a really good receiver in the second, and a really good running back in the third, I really do think we're like those three players away from being nasty. The way Justin's playing, if he can continue to get better, again, I don't think he's gonna, I think the superstar potential is now gone with him, but that's fine. I do think he could be a really good starting quarterback. And I must admit, for the first time, I'm also saying this too. The way the Bills are kind of dipping, the way the Chiefs are kind of dipping, I don't think you need a superhuman anymore. I think if you have a really good quarterback, you might be able to compete. I don't think you necessarily need a superhero as your quarterback anymore. I think you still need to have superhero upside. And I think that's where Justin Fields is still there, right? I think what he can do for you is he could be a starting caliber quarterback and be good, but he can still pull out that superhero human trait, especially with his legs once a game, which might be all you need. Which you know what I mean, you're still gonna need that. Which is why I never like Kenny Pickett because I don't think Kenny Pickett could even give you that, even on his best day. Justin Fields can still do some things for you where it's like, okay, great. We don't need you to be Patrick Mahomes every game. We just need you to be Patrick Mahomes for a play. And I think he can do that for you. So I'm okay with that. Um, Again, he might not be our future, but I do think he's at least good enough where he could be our guy for another year or two until we can draft that guy. So yeah, I haven't been this optimistic on the Steelers team in a long time. I'm really excited to see what we can do. But again, it doesn't matter if we keep losing games that we have no business losing. And again, this goes back to even the Ben Roethlisberger days. Like, again, I'm not trying to get into this tangent, but like, it's like, dude, yeah, let me just move on because I'll be here all day with that. All right, back to college. Travis Hunter put on an absolute show in the blowout win against UCF. Um, Dominating both sides of the ball, playing well, hitting this Heisman pose after a diving interception. Um, he's awesome, man. He's awesome. He's going to be a top five pick. The question is, can he play both sides? Should he play both sides? Is his appetite to play both sides going to hurt his draft stock? I don't know. I feel like with Shohei Ohtani, it's weird because on one hand, I think the NFL would love to see somebody try it, and be great at both sides. On the other hand, we've also seen it with Shohei Ohtani, where it's like him playing both has hampered him because he's been hurt, right? And even this year, he didn't pitch this year and he went 50 for 50. Like, he's probably going to win MVP for the NL, right? So it's like Shohei could be a Cy Young pitcher if he just sticks to pitcher. He could be an MVP hitter if he just sticks to hitting. And it's like, if you have Travis Hunter on your team, are you saying to yourself he could be an all-pro corner if he just plays corner, or an all-pro receiver if he just plays receiver? Or are we okay with him just being a really good corner and a really good receiver? Maybe a number two corner and a number two, maybe even a number three receiver. If you're okay with that, great. Is that worth the top five pick though? And that's what makes it weird. And again, it's also football where the chances of you getting hurt are exponentially increased. And the chance of him not being good, like again, another YouTuber, Hail Mary Sports, and he might have said the same thing about Najee, asking more I think about it. But like, he made a good point. Like, do you want him playing corner, facing some of the best receivers at the end of the game, and he's tired because he's played 100 reps, and the receiver that he's guarding has only had 50? So he gives up a big play because he's tired, not because he's not good, but because he's tired to lose you the game. So those are things you do got to think about with him. But a part of me wants to see him try it, because if he does it, like, that would be awesome. Like, we would be able to say, wow, we saw a two-way player in baseball again, and we saw a two-way player in football again. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's old school. That is like as old school as you can get. And so, like, I do think it'd be cool to see him try to do it. It's probably one of those things, like, I don't want him to do it on my team. But if another team drafts him and he's successful there doing it, good for him. All right. So again, this is where I wanted Charles on this pod. Um, I wanted to try to do a new segment called Division Spotlight. Um, what we want to do, some of the feedback we've gotten is you guys spend too much time on your teams and not enough on other teams. That's a good point. This is a football pod. We should talk about other teams. Of course, we're going to talk about our teams because those are the teams that we watch more in depth, and some of our followers are also fans of those teams. But this was a way that I wanted to highlight some other teams in football. So to make it easier, I said, why don't we just dive into divisions as a whole, especially even if it's once every couple of pods. So instead of it being like a weekly thing, we can look back and say, hey, now that a couple more games have been played, what do we think about these teams in the division? And I started with the NFC East because we really wanted to talk about Jaden Daniels. But again, I knew we were also going to talk about the Giants if Charles was on the pod. So I wanted to do the NFC East so that we could just knock this division out. Um, but I'll go ahead and do it while he's not here. Again, I'll start with the Commanders. Jaden Daniels has been awesome. I'm really happy that he's panned out so far. Again, I root for all these guys to do well. If you've seen that video of when he left Arizona State and the players were dogging him and making fun of him and ridiculing him, it's really good to see the bounce back. Um, Again, I don't know what all went down at Arizona State, but apparently, obviously, it didn't end on good terms if his own players were kind of making fun of him on the way out. To see him bounce back at LSU and now in the NFL is good. It's great to see. As a fan of football, you want that Washington team to be good because their fans deserve it, especially. And maybe it's fitting that now that Dan Snyder's no longer there, maybe they finally have their franchise guy that could take them to new heights. Um, so yeah, it's great to see. They might mess around and win this division, man. Like, they're playing really good football right now, and it's fun to watch, and I hope they keep it up. Daniel Jones is interesting. There's been a lot of, especially after the game against the Cowboys, it's been a lot of film on that game and how he played well, but at the same time didn't play well. Like, that Malik Neighbors catch should have been a touchdown if he throws a better ball and more on time and doesn't float it out to him. Um, he hasn't played bad by the numbers. Turnovers have been down, efficiency has been up. But again, it's just like little things where it's like he's still kind of holding this team back, if that makes sense. Um, so it's weird. It's one of those things where I think at this point you just got to move on from him. They're not going to bench him because again, he's not playing bad enough to be benched. But I think after this year, you think you have to move on. And then there's been also some talk about Malik Neighbors. He got hurt uh dropping a pass at the end of the Cowboys game that was a critical fourth down catch, in which he tried to catch along the sidelines, ended up dropping it, and ended up, Trump, because he's trying to catch the ball, hitting his head on the ground and like getting a concussion. Um, and then the week before, I believe, or a couple weeks ago, he also dropped a key pass against the Commanders, I believe. I believe on fourth down or third down or something like that. And it was one of those things where they could have won the game. Both games he played well, but he's had some clutch drops. And so is that going to be an issue, right? Is he going to be a number one receiver if he can't show up in the biggest moments? For me, it's early. I'm not willing to go there yet. We got to see it. Both times were also again on sideline plays, and he's a rookie. Again, I think people forget there is an art to keeping both feet in bounds, especially when your whole life you don't have to do that. Your whole life is just get 1 foot, and then in the NFL it's 2 feet. So the fact that both have been those type of plays is one of the reasons why I'm not stressing out about it because I'm like, I feel like that's something he can get better at as he, becomes a veteran. It's still early in his rookie campaign, right? Um, so I'm okay with that. But at the same time, again, as great as this guy is, and he was drafted sixth overall, and right now he is the focal point of the offense, that is something he's gonna have to work on because when you're drafted sixth overall, those are the plays they need you to make. So one of the reasons why I've always vouched for Antonio Brown, that dude was clutch, dude. He was clutch. When you needed a play to be made, he made it every single time. Every single time. Like that dude was the most clutch football player I've ever seen, paired with Ben Roethlisberger, who was one of the most clutch, who was literally one of the most clutch quarterbacks the game has ever seen. It was a great combo to watch. And as much as they underachieved, one of the reasons why I gave them grace is because there were so many games that we don't win without them. Like they were our whole team. The defense wasn't that good. They were the only guys on offense, especially when Le'Veon was hurt or suspended or both. Um, and those guys just went out and made plays, especially when we need them the most in the clutch. So being clutch is important, man. If you're going to be a number one receiver, you do have to be clutch. So Malik Neighbors has been great so far. I think if you're a Giants fan, you're still happy you drafted him, especially with JJ McCarthy hurt, especially with Bo Nix not playing well. Those were the two guys that you were considering at sixth. I think right now, as a Giants fan, you're still happy you got Malik Neighbors. But I do also see where it's like, hey man, you're gonna have to step up. The Cowboys, they haven't been good at all. They should have lost their game against the Giants. To be honest with you, this is a question I kind of wanted to pitch to Charles because I haven't really watched the Cowboys this year. So the question is, what's been the issue? Um, again, this was a question I kind of wanted to pitch to Charles because he's at least watched the Giants game against the Cowboys. I'm sure as a Giants fan, he's paying more attention to them than I am. Um, so I can't really, unfortunately, answer this question. I just think they're just not that good, to be honest with you. I think that their team, for the most part, was three or four players, and Micah Parsons, from what I'm hearing, just hasn't played that well, as well as he usually does this year. Um, Dak is Dak. He's gonna be good, but is he gonna be great? CD Lamb has been great, but again, like I just said with the Steelers, it's hard to win when it's just those two guys, especially on an offense. They need a running back. Um, yeah, their defense just hasn't been as good as it used to be, and Dan Quinn's not there anymore, so maybe that's a part of it as well. I think there's a bevy of factors. They need some pieces, and it's going to be some rough sledding because again, they paid Dak, they paid CD, they still got to pay Micah. Yeah, I don't know. They're gonna have to draft really well the next couple of years, and to kind of reset that team. Then the Eagles, kind of like with Trevor Lawrence, I think it's time to have a serious conversation about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts is starting to look like Carson Wentz to me, aka a one-year wonder. If you remember, Carson Wentz had an MVP caliber season, and then since then has been struggling. Jalen Hurts had an MVP caliber season, and since then hasn't looked good. If it's not the tush push, you don't know what you're getting from Jalen Hurts. Um, Remember, he didn't look that good before they got AJ Brown. And so that first year he had AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, he looked amazing. And I get it. This is now their third different offense coordinator since then. And it's hard to win when you're constantly changing systems up and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know. It's just the Eagles shouldn't be, they should be dominating this division, dominating the NFC. The fact that they're not, I don't know. They're a much better team on paper than they are performing. And it starts with the head coach and the quarterback. I I call it how I see it. All right, QB watch. We did this last time. We're gonna do it again. Again, both of our teams are teams that might be considering looking for a quarterback. There are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. And so, as you guys know, I've been doing the mock drafts and stuff like that. But if you're not a fan of mock drafts, I think this is something that you can at least get into if you still want to know about who to look for, especially again, if your team needs a quarterback. So, guys that improved their stock since we last talked, Jalen Milroe was phenomenal against Georgia. He was flawless. He really was. Um, he's probably put himself back into that quarterback one conversation. And good for him. I mean, this was again, this, I still maintain this isn't a great quarterback class to begin with. And anybody you take QB1 is going to have some, asterisk next to his name. But all you can ask these kids to do is perform well enough to put themselves in that position. And that's what he's done. So kudos to him for doing that. Drew Alar has been playing well. He played well on Saturday. Again, he's a guy that you probably want to take if you have a quarterback already, so you can let him sit for a year. But again, the superstar potential is there. It's just he's just got to still work on being consistent. He's been consistent, but not consistent enough. But again, stock is rising. Shador Sanders, I had somebody as stock down last time. I have stock up this time because he's played well. Since that loss, they've had two really good wins, including, like I said, that blowout win. And Shador is weird. And again, I really wanted Charles to be on this pod for this because it's a conversation. He really likes Shador. He's somebody that wants Shador in the Giants. Shador is weird because his ceiling isn't high. But at the same time, it's weird because we don't know what his ceiling is because he's had to deal with a bad Colorado team. You know what I mean? He's had a bad offensive line. He's had decent weapons. Coaching staff isn't the greatest. But especially the offensive line just hasn't been good. And it's like the fact that he's looked this good with that little help from their offensive line and that little help from the coaching staff, it's like maybe his ceiling's a little bit higher than we think it is. Um, I mean, he's probably the best pocket passer out of this class. And again, that's not saying much because this class has a lot of boomer bust type of potential quarterbacks, and a lot of them are because they're great athletes like a Jalen Milroe and a Cam Ward, but maybe not the greatest pocket passers in terms of accuracy and anticipation and all that good stuff. Um, so he's the best out of the class in that regards. But at the same time, doesn't have the elite arm strength you're looking for. Uh, but he just does a lot of things right. Um, but again, it's one of those weird things where it's like we're starting to question maybe his ceiling is a little bit higher because if he could perform this well on a team that's just not that good, what can he do on a team in the NFL or hopefully has a better offensive line and a better cast around him. But again, with that being said, if you're getting drafted in the top five, are you going to a better situation? If that team's drafting in the top five, that usually means they need more than just a quarterback. It usually means their offensive line is probably not that good. It usually means they probably don't have weapons. So I don't know. Again, you put him on the Giants with Malik Neighbors, he could do some things. But the Giants offensive line is still not all the way there yet either. So again, it's one of those weird things. I don't know. But his stock is rising because he has been playing well. And we do have to at least question his potential now in a good way. Guys that hurt themselves, Cam Ward, he played well against Virginia Tech on Saturday, but it was like the complete Cam Ward experience where he made some great plays. He made that little shuffle pass play to the running back while he was getting taken down to the ground. Um, so he made some wild plays, but then he also had some really bad interceptions, including a pick six. And so it was one of those games where it's like you literally saw the highs and lows. They did win the game and he did play well, but again, you saw those plays that make you say, that's why we're afraid to draft this kid high. I still, as of right now, I probably still have him as my quarterback one. Um, maybe with Jalen Milroe in as 1A now. But again, this is a class, it is going to fluctuate week to week because it's just not that great of a class and nobody's really separating themselves. So, and again, with Cam Ward and guys like that, when you have these games where they play well, but they also show you some of the inaccuracies and some of the bad decision making, you can't really you could it's got to be a stock down because it's what makes you so afraid to draft him in the first place. So that's why I think he hurt his stocks. Not that he played bad, but but his stock was up because he wasn't showing some of those bad decision makings and bad interceptions. When he has a game where he has some of those, his stock's gonna go down because you want to see him continue to not make those mistakes. And so that's the thing. And then Carson Beck, yeah, he played well in the second half, but he was atrocious in the first half. And I mean atrocious. And even then, I believe he had an interception to lose the game for Georgia, to end it, basically, after coming back. And then after the great catch and run by Ryan Williams I talked about earlier, there was still like 2 minutes and 43 seconds left in the game, and Carson Beck threw it, the game clinching interception. So he didn't play well. And for a guy who, again, was in that Shador Sanders category of not high ceiling, maybe a high floor, but not high ceiling, you can't afford to have a bad game because, again, it shows, especially when you're throwing picks and you're not making good decisions. Because, again, it's like that's the one thing that you're supposed to be good at. So, yeah, he didn't look good to me. He was kind of already falling out of that QB1 conversation anyway, because he doesn't hasn't looked great this year. Again, he hasn't looked bad, but he hasn't looked great. A game like this, and again, with a guy without a high ceiling, a game like this, now you're starting to hear day two, which is really bad. Again, it's early. He could bounce back, and if he plays well, and he's in the SEC, he's going to play other great defenses. If he tears up other defenses, and they'll probably play Alabama again at some point, if nothing else, in the SEC championship game. If he bounces back, he can regain his stock. But for right now, yeah. So that's the video. You can find me at Never For Brett Me. That's NEVA underscore the number 4 BRETT underscore ME on Instagram and all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, uh, uh, Threads, all of them. We are at the underscore dope blog on Instagram, the dope blog, all one word on Twitter. You can find us at www.thedope.blog. And because you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And join us next time as we continue to discuss other people's excellence. Deuces.